Welcome, friend, to Life and Liberty Radio. I'm David Householder, here to encourage your pursuit of happiness. You and I are partners, exploring our shared spiritual journeys. Together, we're dreaming and working for a free society. Tell others today about our adventure in faith and freedom. So breathe in, open your mind, lift up your spirit. Let's get started. So today we deal with the question, can you really own property? Can you really own your own home? Can you really own land? Well, I thought until this week that I was a homeowner. And if you dig a little deeper, you realize that none of us in the United States, except for people in Minnesota, are homeowners. Well, why is Minnesota an exception? Well, it's an interesting story, and it's not because the bank owns the house. You may say, yeah, I own my house, but the bank owns most of it. Let's say you own your home free and clear, or you think that it's free and clear. If you look at your deed, which you have, by the way, signed over to the county, so the county, as the agent of the sovereign government of the United States, or actually the agent of the crown, we are sort of a crownless crown, and we follow English common law as if there were a king or a queen, and there isn't. Basically, you own it, what's called fee simple. And it has nothing to do with paying a fee. Fee is short for fief, fief simple, which comes from fiefdom, which comes from the feudal system, Feudal, from Europe. The feudal system, you own it fief simple. You are a fief. And the Lord owns the property, and not God the Lord. I'm talking about the master, or the crown, or the federal government, actually, with the county acting as agent. And you don't really even have the title. It's been deeded over to the county. In fact, if you pay off your house, just try getting some kind of documentation for that. There really isn't any. Somebody might write you a letter saying that it's paid off, but there's no free and clear document because you cannot own land free and clear in most of the United States. So this is basically a throwback to European feudalism, 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 and it turns out that there's really almost no such thing as free and clear, otherwise known, according to lawyers, as allodial, Allodial, allodial title. Allodial title means that you own the property and owe nobody anything. Well, allodial property was present during feudalism, and that was property owned by the church. And the reason allodial property was limited to the church was because for the government to tax the church would get the church angry, and the church would come after the government. You only have to look up what happened to the empire, the emperor, when Pope Gregory called him to account in Canossa and made the emperor stand outside in the snow during the Middle Ages until he repented. And so there's always been an uneasy relationship between the church and the government. And the agreement, or the, shall we say, the compromise is that, from the Middle Ages, that the government will not tax the church, because that would give the government power over church, which would violate, actually, the separation of church and state, which is not something the United States invented, which goes all the way back to the snows of Canossa. But in any case, what we're dealing with here is the fact that the United States still uses a feudal property system. The only allodial land is land owned by churches. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions here and there, but churches are not taxed because that violates the separation of church and state. The state cannot tax the church any more than the church can tax the state. They have no actual authority over one another in a truly freedom of religion-oriented society, because the power to tax is also the power to destroy, and the government should never be given the power to destroy the church. So allodial land was something which was present in the Middle Ages. And it was proposed by the Founding Fathers that all of the land in the United States, after we threw off the king, would be allodial. And it's something which Thomas Jefferson was hoping for. It was something which he had pushed through and tried to get going at the Constitutional Convention. And in the Bill of Rights, it talks about eminent domain. So Thomas Jefferson lost the battle. He was hoping that Americans in a free society would be able to own property free and clear, because he believed that the ownership of property was a natural right and not a legal right. There's two kinds of rights. There's legal rights, which the government gives us by enacting laws, and there are natural rights, which cannot be given away. They are inalienable or unalienable, depending on how it's spelled in what document. Natural rights are given by our Creator according to natural law, on which common law is based and on which the U.S. Constitution is based, because it's based on the Declaration. So basically we have natural rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and also legal rights. Now, also listed under natural rights is the idea that we have the right to property, and that is not a legal right, that is a natural right. If you find something that belongs to no one and you keep it or you do something with it, the old idea of finders keepers, which is true, you just raise the value of it, work it, do whatever you want with it. If it's not being used, you can have it as long as you can do something good with it. If you can prove it up, you could have a homestead as long as you proved it up. And if you prove it up, you can keep it. If you don't, you lose it. But basically, what it comes down to is the natural right of property. And Thomas Jefferson said, hey, we're starting a new country here. Let's get rid of feudalism in our property rights, and let's move into an allodial system which recognizes natural rights, as opposed to the divine right of kings, which European governments had believed in. But the problem with divine right of kings is that if you're the crown, then you own everything. And technically, the king or the queen of England owns everything in England except for the allodial lands of the church. But there's a little catch there, because the king or the queen is also the head of the Church of England. But anyways, I digress. Natural rights, legal rights. Property is a natural right. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property, those kinds of things are natural rights. If you're like me, you love getting packages in the mail from Amazon. I love to check the side of my house because that's where they come. I've got a little table set up there. I think, ooh, there's a package. And I love shopping with Amazon. You say, well, it costs extra with the shipping, but the truth is you'd spend a lot more in gas and time just driving around looking for stuff. You can find almost anything on Amazon. It's kind of like the old Sears catalog or the Wells Fargo wagon. It's part of our American tradition to have delivery to our homes. And if you shop on Amazon, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Would you please do all of your Amazon shopping through my website, davidhouseholder.com. Go to davidhouseholder.com. At the top of the page, there's an Amazon banner. Click on there and do your shopping from there. If you do that, I will get a portion of the proceeds, which will keep this show on the air. So it's good for you, it's good for me, it's good for everybody. Hey, it's good for America. Shop on Amazon and do it through davidhouseholder.com. So, that being said, property tax is a vestige of European feudal rent from feudalism, and it was paid by the fief to the lord, and you're still doing it because you're the fief, and the county is standing in for the lord, which is the crown, which the United States stands in for, the Dutch would say a stadhouder. It stands in for the crown because it assumes that there is one. So it's like an empty chair, but that chair still has authority. So how do we know that that's really the case? Am I just making this up? No. There's something called eminent domain, And you can look it up, and it's in the Constitution because Thomas Jefferson lost the argument to Madison, who wanted a stronger federal government. And without a stronger federal government, he was thinking you couldn't have a strong federal government, Madison was thinking, without eminent domain, without the power to take land without asking, which, according to natural law, is theft. But anyways, Hugo Grotius in 1625, the great Dutch legal scholar, put forth the idea of eminent domain, 1625. And in English, eminent domain is supreme lordship. Supreme lordship of the land belongs to the crown, and the crown can take it in an emergency or whenever the crown feels like it. There is heavy eminent domain when people take your property and build a freeway, and there is soft eminent domain called zoning. And you've all felt the heavy boot of the crown when it comes to zoning, because they tell you exactly where to put the bathrooms, exactly where to put the lights, where to put the sprinklers. And why do they do that? Because they can. Because according to our legal system, they are the true owner. You are just the tenant, literally, in legal language. You're the tenant, and you own it by fee simple, which is not really owning. It's just renting. So the state of Minnesota actually put in its constitution that all land in Minnesota is allodial. It's the only state to do so, and it challenges the federal system that we have eminent domain, and it's probably unconstitutional for that reason, since the Constitution talks about eminent domain and affirms it. It doesn't make eminent domain the law. It receives it as something from the Middle Ages and actually affirms it as being something we need to continue to do. So why Minnesota? Well, Minnesota was founded by radicals from New England before the Germans and the Scandinavians came later. Minnesota was founded by radicals from New England who had Congregationalist Puritan basis in their stock, in their cultural stock, and they believed that kings were a really bad thing. Well, why is that? Because the people from New England originally came from East Anglia, and those were the Roundheads of the wars over government in England, the Royalists versus the Roundheads. And the Roundheads were associated with the Puritans, and they ended up being the Pilgrims, the Puritans, those folks who started Harvard and Yale and got this country rolling. And so when the West was settled, a whole bunch of them went up to Minnesota, the more radically inclined, and they founded the state and threw in, oh, by the way, in Minnesota, all land is allodial, which has never been challenged, but that's going to be a humdinger when that happens, because really it is unconstitutional, even though it is in the Constitution. Now, I really wonder why they can tax our property. If property is a natural right, like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, then a natural right cannot, by definition, be taxed. It's something to think about. Do you really own your property? Or is the United States of America, which is trying to be a free society, I really believe we are, do we still have one foot in feudalism from the Middle Ages? Are you a fief, or are you a free citizen? Well, that's all for today on Life and Liberty Radio. Thanks so much for sharing this part of your spiritual journey with me. Now, the views on this program are not necessarily those of my advertisers, sponsors, places I work or do business with. They're purely my own, but I'm sharing them with you, so share your ideas with me. Write me on Twitter at Liberty House, LIBERTYHOUS, no E. Until next time, let's continue dreaming and working for a free and spiritually grounded society.